Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie and I'm gay, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different in preparation for MLB The Show 18. We are going to be taking a deep dive into all of the legends. This is a new series where I'll take a deep dive into all the legends and we look at what they could look like, what some of their best cards could look like in the coming year. And we're going to start out with Benito Santiago. I'm going to try to put one of these out every few days. Every time we get info on a new legend or something like that. It's going to be a lot easier for me to do position players than it is pitchers, because a lot of the old-timey pitchers, I don't have a ton of info about what types of pitches they threw and how effectively they threw them. So I would be kind of spitballing there and going off like word of mouth and stuff like that. So I'll definitely be doing all of the position players, but I'm not sure how many pitchers I'll get to. If I have enough information on the pitcher, I will try to do a build of them, but I don't know. We'll just kind of play it by ear. But right now, we are going to take a look at Benito Santiago and how good this card could be. And it's surprising how good this card really could be. His best year, in my opinion, the best card that he is going to have is his 1996 card with the Philadelphia Phillies. In fact, it was his only year with the Phillies, and it will probably be an impact veteran card because he didn't win any awards, he didn't go to an all-star game, and he was kind of up there in age. So, I mean, he was only 31 years old, so he wasn't that old, but, you know, he was a veteran. He was an established veteran who had made a few all-star games at that point. So, yeah, this is going to be an impact veteran card, but it's going to be pretty darn good. Kind of reminiscent of like a Johnny Bench or somebody like that. So, yeah, let's get into it. Okay, everyone knows Benito Santiago was a phenomenal catcher, right-handed from Puerto Rico. He was very, very good. I didn't try to get into his physical appearance too much. I just kind of picked the face template that was as close as I could get it. And I mean, it doesn't look too bad, especially like with the sunglasses on and everything, and like the goatee. And I made him, you know, Hispanic as evidenced by his skin color. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, how does this look? Does this look kind of like Benito Santiago? I looked at his body and he was kind of high-hipped and kind of lanky, and yeah, this seems about right. 6'1", 180. That's what he's listed on Baseball Reference. So yeah, that's kind of the image I get with Benito Santiago, something like that. His motions, I looked through the database that they have on Operation Sports to see if they had his batting stance. They don't. But I tried to find some clips on YouTube of him hitting. It was surprisingly harder than you might think with a player of his caliber, but I did find a couple, and he kind of had a really wide stance. Even though the stance isn't that wide, he had kind of a wide open stance that was a little crouched and hunched over, with his bat kind of dragging on his shoulder. This was the best estimation that I could get. His swing, he had a big, pretty two-handed swing. Every now and then he would let go and it'd be a one-handed swing, that type. He didn't, his leg kick wasn't this big, but he definitely had one. So it'll be interesting to see what type of leg kick they give him next year, but I assume that his batting stance and stuff will look something like this stance, this swing, with this. And as everybody knows, the two-handed long swing is definitely an effective swing, so he shouldn't have any issues on that front. Alright, now let's get into what everybody is waiting for, his attributes. Okay, his attributes. I gave him a 65 contact versus righties, and let me justify some of these to you. Versus righties, he had a 252 average that year, so pretty good. Not, you know, that's probably around that time, 1996. That was probably a little bit below league average. So, you know, he's not terrible, but definitely not great. I feel like a 65 is about right for that. But he had a 230 ISO versus righties, which is definitely justified. Maybe even could go above an 80. But given his track record against, you know, over the course of his career when it comes to power and stuff like that. I felt like a 78 for a 1 season 230 ISO felt about right, but against lefties he was just a monster. He hit 333 that year. I gave him an 89 contact rating for that. That could also be, I tried to be as conservative as I could be because I don't want to get too aggressive with these ratings just to make an easy 99 overall. So I felt like an 89 was about right. That's probably about where you're going to see him. Versus lefties, though, he had a 292 ISO versus left-handed pitching, which is just absurd, especially for a catcher. So I definitely feel like that justifies a very aggressive 95 overall grade for his power versus lefty. So as you can see, he kind of looks like, you know, it's like kind of like a Johnny Bench. Pretty good power versus both sides, but pretty extreme splits when it comes to lefty and righty contact. So yeah, he, you know, I could see this card being a very effective platoon or something like that. He also kind of reminds me of that Buster Posey card from earlier in the year. You know, that there are a few catchers that are good versus lefties and, you know, average to slightly above average versus righties. But overall, pretty solid hitting stats. And to go along with that, the bunting and drag bunting, for any of the stats that I couldn't get a ton of data on, I just set it at 50, so we won't really go over those. For plate vision, he had a 19.5 K percentage in 1996, and that was against a league average of 16.5% that year. So he was a little bit worse than league average, and I ended up giving him a 62 overall for his plate vision. Given his track record, that could go up a little bit higher because he never had a terrible strikeout problem or anything like that. He was always pretty good about getting the bat on the ball. But I felt like since he did kind of have a down year when it came to strikeouts, I felt like I would knock that down a little bit. His plate discipline was almost exactly league average that year. He had a 9.2 walk rate, and that's against a league average of a 9.1 walk rate. So he was almost perfectly average, but he was always pretty good in that department, so I ended up giving him a 73 overall. His OPS, with runners in scoring position, was a 937, so he definitely came through clutch. You know me, I don't really think batting clutch really does a whole lot, but some people do. So for a lot of people, that might be kind of cool to see that he has a, you know, that he might be pretty clutch for them if they think that that stat does anything. He didn't really have a lot of speed. He stole 2 bases on 2 attempts that year. He was never really that much of a base running threat, but he did have a base running score. He had 0.3 God, I can never remember this stat. Base running runs above average. He had 0.3, and every single other year of his career he was in the negative in that category. So this was actually probably the best base running year that he had of his career, so that helped out a good bit too. Fielding wise, he was always a solid fielder, but this was actually not his best year defensively on Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. This was one of the worst defensive years of his career up to this point, but he was still definitely well above average in the defensive department. So I ended up giving him 87 arm strength with 80 arm accuracy. He ended up throwing out. He had a caught stealing rate of 30%, which is very, very solid for a catcher. His reaction, I ended up setting it at 75. Just that's kind of a mix of a bunch of stats along with the speed. I felt like 70 and how they kind of rate other catchers. Felt like 75 was about right for that. His fielding ability, never made a ton of errors or anything like that. And for his blocking, he only had 8 pass balls on the year, so not terrible at all. So I ended up giving him solid blocking. I could see other Benito Santiago cards having much better fielding than this, even though this is, you know, solidly above average. there were some years where he was just where he was excellent defensively and would definitely justify some higher ratings than this. But since this was his best offensive year, I felt like this was the card that is going to end up getting the highest rating for him. And what rating is that? Let's go ahead and see. It is a 97 overall, and if you look at it from this perspective right here, that is a pretty juicy card. I mean, 65, 78, 89, 95. I would definitely give this card a solid fag rating, especially considering, you know, he has a decent swing, good batting stance. You know, he's not terribly short or anything like that. Just a really solid card overall. Is going to provide you some pop versus both sides. He's going to have a good average versus lefties. His vision isn't going to kill you. Overall, I think this is just a very, very, very solid card. Probably not an in-game card. Like, I don't think you're going to be carrying Benito Santiago like well into October or anything like that, but I do think early in the game, if they come out with this card, he could provide a lot of value to a lot of players. So yeah, that is the first edition of my Legend Deep Dive. I don't know what I'm going to call this series yet. You'll find out in the title. But yeah, we start out with Benito Santiago. Next time, we are going to be taking a look at Vladimir Guerrero. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. But until then, peace!